There is an esoteric saying, which is, as above, so below. It's interesting, the concept, when we look at the sky, which of course is above, and below, which is our Earth. And we pay more attention to the Earth. I'm Agneta Borstein, and I'm an astrologer. It's my pleasure to welcome you to this show, From the Sky to Earth. Today we're going to talk about aspects in astrology. I have done this TV show From the Sky to Earth for a while, and on the nutmegtv.org you can see some other episodes that we go through the basic fundamental part of the zodiac signs, and then the planets, and then we interact with those energies. Basically, I thought today that we're going to go a little further for you who might be interested in it. So if you want to look at those previous episode, what does the planets do to one another? That could be the part of what could be interesting for you to add on to the knowledge of astrology. So we take the pictures into what are they relating to each other. And this relationship between the planets are beneficial as well as challenging. There's a lot of dynamics between certain planets. There is the personal planets, which you can look at on the video on demand on the Nutmeg television. But it's also part of the natal chart. There's always the potentials for what we grow into during one lifetime. Then we grow, of course, we mature, and there's a transit chart. So what happens with the planets that were there at giving at birth? We do also say that you might even choose your own chart. So there is that. When we are on the topic of aspects, it might seem like, for example, they are always doing something to each other. And the first aspect that we go through is called a square. On the picture that you see here, it looks like a closed-in block or a box of some sort. So we might even have the point of contact between one planet here, one in this corner, and one up here and here, which means like it seems like we are in a square box. The square is a challenge, but they are also opportunity for growth. And when we see too many squares, it might be a person that has a strong character. There are those who have squares who decide not to take their personal growth, never mind through astrology, and grow with that. Another point is we also have what we call trines, which is the elements, for example, fire, Aries, Leo, and Sagittarius. They are in then a complete perfect harmony. But it seems like that's not always working very well. But we try to find the trines as a beneficial part of our lives. And on the other side here, there is what we call a sextile. And those are what we consider soft aspects in an astrological observation. Typically, when you have a challenge in your life, you might have a square. But of course, the trines also give us opportunity for personal growth. For example, when there is a full moon, the sun and the moon are always in opposite direction of each other. That's the astronomical part that astrology does pay attention to. So when we look at an opposition, it is an opposite attract. The sun is on one side and the moon is on the other side. That would be this symbol here, an opposition. And yes, opposite attracts in astrology as well. The other symbol, the one on this side here, is called a conjunction. Now, conjunction are quite easy to see when we study astrology because they are more or less in the same. They don't have to be in the same sign, but they have to be very close together as on top of each other. Who is the strongest? Is Mars stronger than Saturn? That depends on how we see it and the individual's natal chart, what transits are in that. Aspects, what is in the natal chart. So there is that constant growth when we look at charts per se for the natal positions, but then of course we change. So again, conjunction are 0 degrees, so they are basically in the same side, signs, but then again, often they go out of sign and they can still be conjunction. That would be a class that maybe you would understand at another time. And then the opposition are 180 degrees from each other, because in the zodiac chart that we deal with is 360 degrees. So of course 360 divided in 2 is 180, and again that opposition becomes quite strong. Now here goes the square, which that is the 90-degree square of a challenge or beneficial for personal growth. Most of the time that is what we saw on the other part of this square. And here again goes the trine, which is 120 degrees in the same element. However, they do not have to be in the same element, but they have to be in a harmonious way together. And sometimes we do say with too many trines in a chart, a person might be born with a silver spoon, but it's also that opportunity to take that into advantage and not become lazy with that aspect in a natal chart, because certain people have a lot of gifts and talents, and that could be shown in the trines, but also in the squares. A sextile is 2 signs away from each other, and that's a 60-degree division between the two. And a sextile is not as good as a trine, but if you step out, you will find it. So to be aware of those opportunity is also to pay attention to your personal chart. I thought, as I live in the state of Connecticut, and perhaps most of you do, I was looking at the news and I'm like, what is going on with the state of Connecticut? There's a lot of challenging with the economy. And I stay neutral in my non-political opinion. So I just wanted to say that it must show in the chart of the state of Connecticut. Now the Connecticut chart is the incorporation, of course, in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, not in Connecticut. That was January 9th, 1788. We do not know the time, but so we don't have to, as you had looked in other programs from the sky to earth, is about systems, and you don't have to learn the symbols. Don't be scared, but this is the chart of the state of Connecticut. So we see right away where we go on to the sun is a Capricorn state. And that is kind of significant, the way I see state of Connecticut as being quite prominent in status, achievement. It is supposed to be one of the most expensive states to live in. I don't know, but I'm just taking that Saturn in itself, which belongs to Capricorn, has a tendency to be very strong in its commitment and hardworking. At the time, not at 12 o'clock, but at this chart, the moon is in Aquarius and the Venus is in Aquarius. So that is also indirectly relating to, we have rulers. You have also looked at that in another session of, or another episode of As Above, So Below. The Saturn is always the ruler of Capricorn. So when we go back and look at, here is the sun in Capricorn, and when we go down here, when we go down here, we see Mars in Cancer, and it happens to be in a retrograde motion. So when I looked at the chart saying there must be something going on that would be quite prominent, because I think it took everybody off guard. I don't know if I was, but it was just like suddenly there was a lot of economic challenges with a lot of layoffs, unfortunately, in the state of Connecticut. So I took a look at the other chart. We have to kind of see how natal chart is always influenced no matter what we study. So the more, maybe this is not the place to go through in detail about the state of Connecticut. But when I took the next chart, then you find right away up where we talked about the sun sign here, and up here we call that a midheaven. Midheaven is 17 degrees in Capricorn. And so the midheaven is where we have our public image. It's where people are noticing us. It might be where we work at. And again, we don't know because this is a 12 o'clock chart. And 12 o'clock chart is because we don't know the birth time. So the sun is always on the top of the sky, so 12 o'clock noon. But either way, wherever we follow that sun, if we had the right time, then Pluto in the sky right now is 17 degrees. We see that here. It might not show very well. But with that, it might not be 19 degrees, but it's very close to the sun. And when we go back opposing this, we have that 16 degree of that Mars. And Mars is a fighter. It's contradicting. It gets upset easy. It has a way of not agreeing. So when it's retrograded, suddenly emotion that might have been brewed for a while tends to come up to the surface. So that was just one of the observations. I thought maybe it was a Saturn cycle, but it's not. So in that process of how long Pluto will stay on the sun is quite a while. So if it was that I could take this little cheat sheet that we have at times, then I'm thinking that by July 8th of 2016, there is still the challenge. June 23rd, going back to this Pluto-Mars, I don't think the budget will pass, and we don't want to predict any doomsday about the budget, but by June 8th, August 29th, there is still challenges there. And the whole picture goes to this disagreement until December of 2016. So there's always the hope of the sight, but I think that's beyond us to understand how in a pretty stable state could suddenly have all these layoffs. Did the economy catch back on us? We don't know. We're not, maybe some of you are on that state budget committee, but it seems like, if anything, the next year's budget has more of cautiousness. It might even take a good year to get caught up with this picture that we can do astrologically. If you just joined me, this is a program about astrology from the sky to earth. And the next one we find there is more aspects to astrology. So I just want to run by this. It's a little sensitive today here. Goes fast. So this picture has, again, and a little clarification for you who might be interested in how we create, how we say, how we have our language in astrology. And of course, language, just in general, astrology is a language to learn. We have to learn A, the zodiac, B, the planets, C, the houses, D is what we do today, the aspects. So we had talked earlier about the 90-degree square aspect that will go up to square to the 180 degree, that's a square. And then that could be beneficial for somebody that would have an opposition, so that the squares then become an opportunity for personal growth. And we are again reminded that we choose our chart and how we really have a lot of strong will to deal with astrology. There is opposite of the doomsday prediction that some of you might have in that thought process, but astrology nowadays deals more with the opportunity for growth. Mundane astrology, we look at world events. I was also talking about the trines, that's the 120 degrees, that goes into the other trine here, and it should go into, it doesn't show it on this one, but it will be the element goes into a trine in the sky. We also have some other ones that are a semi-sextile, a semi-square. A semi-square is this symbol. It goes half through the square. So there's also an opportunity to observe those little points. And by the way, if you don't know your chart, you might want to look up. There's a lot of free sources in the internet, of course, and one that I recommend is Astrolabe. That is ALABE.com, and you can look at your own aspects in your chart. This is another one, just reinforcing the fact of the stars with a conjunction when there's two planets in the same house. We go to sextiles, or we go, for example, if there is somebody that you might know that is a Capricorn and have a friend that is a Libra. You know, that goes also with the zodiac sign. Anything works. It might be that these two individuals has a square, but there can also be a conjunction of, a conjunction could be that this person has the moon in Capricorn, and that goes very well together because you have the same emotional part or interaction with one another. So, as I had looked at the state of Connecticut's chart, in a previous episode I did, actually I think it was February of 2016, I took all these Republicans and a few Democrats, and I have an episode on the homepage of nutmeg.org, nutmegtv.org that is, and it's titled 2016 Presidential Election. And I would like for you to watch it rather than me telling you whatever I said. I did more like a character analysis, but at the end of that episode, I might have said something that is showing to perhaps be true. You never know. So the United States chart, July 4th, 1776, of course, Philadelphia, Pennsylvania again. And that is what is interesting about studying the state of Connecticut's chart. That is, as we remember, maybe, the sun was in Capricorn. And the Capricorn opposes Cancer. So there is somewhat connection, and I might not know exactly what that would be, but I feel that the state of Connecticut has a certain connection, prestigious connection, as each state should have with the government. But it's interesting to see that that is an opposition, and they are in degree, as we call them. The state of Connecticut had, and still has, a moon in Aquarius, and so does the United States of America. So there is a little bit of business, education, connection to whatever they decide down there. So I thought that it doesn't look as the presidential election is going very smooth. So I thought that we would just kind of take a look at that too. Perhaps is it going to continue? Now, as far as the, it looked really not easy, the chart before, as before. You might find it easier to look at this chart here, because before that is the last, since 2011, 2012, up to 2015 and springtime of 2016, there were some really strong squares affecting the world at large, but especially the state of Connecticut, I mean the United States of America, because all this energy, as far as Pluto was opposing it, Pluto square Uranus in Aries went right into this whole sector that we see. Both Venus is money, Jupiter is great and good, and Sun, of course, is the focus of the spirit of America. And all those are situated in the house of money. And supposedly, America is a very wealthy and strong country. Now, this little guy here, Mars, again, Mars is in Gemini. And at the time right now, Mars, then we take that, is opposing Uranus. And Saturn, Mars again, is that frustration, anger, and all that stuff. So at the point now, when we look at Mars in the sky, which at this point is 15 degrees, and in the sky, Mars is 20 degrees. So Saturn, throughout the summer of 2016, or throughout the whole year, is going to go back and forth to this point. And it's really not until more late November and the beginning of December of 2016 that this will lighten up, which basically in the synthesized, remember, opposite attracts. The opposite is an attraction as well as meeting people halfway. Understand that everybody has the right of their opinion. The raising up of this little Mars always gives away that in a mundane, this is an electional chart, the July 4th chart, 1776. So when we then see that is still the masses of the population here in America. So it's always uptight or something to learn about when Saturn comes around. This will stay. Saturn goes back and forth. It doesn't like to move. And Saturn is always the guy who is in charge of authority, government. I am the best candidate, if you will. Saturn is a way to say control. So there is nobody controlling anybody when it comes to the going back to this frustration and anger that might occur in this chart. But otherwise, the United States of America is not what it looked like. It's a more stable situation, except this that we are observing at this moment. Of course, there's always something else when we look at it. For example, here is a little bit of direct. We look at degrees too. When there is that conjunction, there is a Neptune in Virgo, and in the sky, see, this is the natal chart that always stays the way we had looked at the natal chart of America. And here is the now. So the now, you have this little guy, Jupiter. And he is 13, but he's going to go up here, and here's some karmic connotation in the next 6 and 7 months. That when Jupiter in September goes over this Neptune, people are confused. People are more like, where are we heading from now? But overall, that would be something that we might want to think about as we have the right to express ourselves, but Mars is very constructive when he's not destructive, that is. So you have the two sides of every planet as we have two sides of every coin. So when we take that into context about who has the right to be the strongest, who's the fighter, there's some really nasty words that has come out of the collective in the way I see it, that of course things are uptight during any elections, but we have dealt with this for a year. And because we study the aspects, this opposition attracts even more anger, because everybody should be allowed to constructively say what they feel, perhaps not with violence, which is, of course, we can hit a pillow and the boxing and all that part of. I'm going to just go back 1 minute to say that this Uranus is in Gemini in the States of America here, and that Mars is also affecting it, but it's going a little less, but it's still staying because they're strong with the Saturn coming forth into that opposition. As this was a program about aspects, then actually sometimes we will look at Saturn cycles and so forth, but in this time of springtime still in the state of Connecticut, the Saturn opposing that Mars, which is retrograded, it's not a good time to not meet somebody halfway, opponents, be verbal, and not the anger and the frustration would be much more better to be allowed to say the opinion, it's like a conversation. You meet halfway if that's possible. So this program has then talked about the different aspects, and like I mentioned before, if you just join me, on the website of nutmegtv.org, there's other episodes of my show From the Sky to Earth about the different zodiac signs, the planets, the houses, and you can put that into perhaps understand the language of astrology just a little better. And it's my pleasure to be your host of this sometimes controversial method of looking at the sky and bringing it to the earth. I'm Agneta Borstein. I do want to thank you, Nutmeg Television, for allowing us to bring this show to you. Thank you.